I'm pretty sure I'm not the only mom who has a weird relationship with screens. On the one hand, I love that I can use my phone and computer to connect with people from home while in the midst of being a mom of little humans. But it's also super hard sometimes to focus on the present moment when there is a phone with instant gratification sitting in my pocket. Luckily, the Mindful with Media podcast is here to help us use technology in a way that is helpful and useful without becoming addicting. I'm Andy Smiley, the Friendly Podcast Guide. I'm a mom who has used podcasts to fight the boredom and loneliness of motherhood, and now I want to help you find a podcast that can do the same thing for you. It can be overwhelming to try and find a podcast you'll enjoy in the thousands of shows that are out there. That's where I come in. My episodes are short, and they answer all of the questions you'll have about the podcast, so you'll know if it's a good fit for you or not. I'm here to help you find a podcast you'll love without wasting your time. Now, let's talk podcasts. Alex Fales, the host, describes the show like this. As a young mom, I know what it's like to turn to your phone without thinking or get sucked into scrolling. It can feel overwhelming to navigate this screen-saturated society. Listen along to the Mindful with Media podcast to feel validated, find solutions to stop wasting time on your phone, and start living a more fulfilling life. The length of each episode is 15 to 30 minutes. The series is ongoing with new episodes available on Wednesdays. Before we learn more about the vibe of the show, we're going to take a quick break to talk about Olive and June nail polish. I love having nail polish on, but I don't handle it well when my nail polish starts to chip a day or two after I paint my nails. That is where Olive and June comes in. I use their Mani system and my nail polish will stay on for a week with no chipping. It brings me so much joy every time I look at my nails with these fun colors, and I want you to have that joy too. You can get 20% off a Mani or Pedi system by using the affiliate link in the show notes. Now we get to hear from Alex as she talks about her own journey with screens and how it led her to starting her business and this podcast. Alex, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to show my listeners your fabulous podcast because I feel like screens are such an interesting part of motherhood that I feel like our moms didn't really have to deal with. So I feel like we need some guidance and I'm really glad you're here. Before we get started, can you introduce yourself a little bit to my listeners?
Absolutely. I'm really glad to be with you here. I'm Alex, and I have two kids that are almost exactly 18 months apart, and a little boy and a little girl. My boy's 2 and my little girl's 6 months. And I am a stay-at-home mom, and I also have started this business, Mindful with Media.
That is awesome. So can you tell us why you decided to start a podcast?
Yeah. Before I get into why I started the podcast, it really comes back to just my passion for screens and the impact of screens and media. I think podcasts are an awesome platform to share information, but really it's the information that I'm passionate about. Mm-hmm. So I got a smartphone when I was in high school, and I'm sure that it had negative impacts on me, but I didn't really notice them until I got to college and I was living on my own, and all of a sudden I had to figure out life on my own. And I really spent a lot of time scrolling social media and just wasting a lot of time on my phone. And right. But the thing is, now that I've started this business, I know that that's normal, but I just felt really kind of dumb about it. And I was like, I'm a disciplined person. I do really well in school. I was a cross country runner. I saw myself as a very disciplined person, but then all of a sudden I could not control my phone use. I was spending way more time on there than I wanted to and just feeling blah. And I would turn to it whenever I felt anything uncomfortable. So if I couldn't sleep at night, okay, I'll just scroll on my phone, or I just I like this guy, but he doesn't like me and I feel awkward about it. Okay, I'll scroll my phone. Or I'm supposed to be doing this assignment, but it's really hard. I'll just scroll on my phone. And I just wasted a lot of time on there. And so, that was my reality. And then basically I just tried a lot to stop wasting so much time on there because it wasn't serving me well. And I considered deleting all my social media accounts, and I even considered getting a dumb phone. And so that was like kind of where I was at. And then I got a job and I was teaching missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints this was during COVID. So all of a sudden these missionaries, they were all stuck at home like the rest of the world, and they had no way to teach people about Jesus Christ except for through social media. And so my job was to figure out and teach these missionaries effective ways to do that. So I thought the job was going to be mostly like teaching them social media marketing like strategies, and a lot of it was that. But what I realized once I started actually training and coaching these missionaries was that a huge portion of my time was spent helping the missionaries create and maintain healthy phone boundaries. And I remember being in a lot of these like training sessions, and I was like, this is what I need. Like, I need to have healthy phone boundaries. And so I think it was around that time. So I think, yeah, I started teaching them, and I just had this idea, like, I need to start this conversation somewhere. And so I put it off for a long time until my son was about 6 months old. And then I was like, okay, I just need to start this. So I started posting things on Instagram, and then it's kind of gradually grown. And then I just released my first podcast episodes last week, actually. So that's why I started my podcast.
I love it. And I feel like a podcast is a great way to get your message to a different audience. It's just a really great way to spread your message and help people to build that community almost. You have that on social media, but sometimes it's hard, like algorithms change or whatever. But with a podcast, you always know it's there, and then whoever is in your community can reach it easily, and they don't have to go searching for it as much.
Exactly. And it's like you can get deeper on a podcast too, where like social media, it's just kind of like little snippets of information, but you can get a lot deeper on a podcast.
Totally. So I feel like you touched on it with how you needed help with screens and figuring out your like screen use, but what do you want people to get out of your podcast?
Yeah, I want people to feel validated. I want them to feel like managing screens for ourselves and for our kids, it's not easy. That, I don't know, I think like it can be hard. And then I also want people to feel hope, because a lot of the messages that I hear and see about screens are really scary. And I'm like, I don't know. It just like scares me for myself. It scares me for my kids, and it just kind of freaks me out. But the more research that I've done, and the more books that I've read, and the more podcasts that I've listened to, there's a lot of hope and a lot of good things that come from technology. So I really want people to learn ways to have technology and screens serve them and help them, and really help their family to thrive and to be better.
Definitely. I love that you're spreading hope, because I feel like sometimes it doesn't feel like hope is easy to find in the like the social media climate, the world climate that we're in. So I'm very grateful to you for spreading a little hope, giving us a little bit of like, it's okay. Like, life is hard. You're not going to be perfect, but that doesn't mean that we're horrible parents or people in general.
Amen. Exactly.
So how would you describe the vibe of your show?
I think it's a hopeful podcast. I try to be pretty, I mean, I feel like this is such a cliche word these days, but like genuine on there. I try to share personal experiences with how I'm navigating my phone use, with mistakes I'm making, with my mental health, and how that's played a role in all of this. So I really like it to be a place of, I guess, vulnerability. But yeah, I would say like vulnerable and hopeful and excited, like kind of with hopeful, just like exciting. Like there's so much good and fun and awesome things that can come from screens.
Definitely. And I think I listened to your first episode and I really liked it. It was really fun. And I would say one word that I would add is like real. You're just being, which I feel like is kind of like vulnerable, but just, it doesn't feel like you're like just laying out all of the terrible things. You're like, these are the things that went well. These are the things that went not so well. And this is how we're working to fix it. So I just really, I liked the, like you said, like genuine, authentic, like that was kind of the vibe that I got personally.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I'm glad. So I like to ask every host what their favorite episode is, or a couple of episodes if you can't choose, because I know it's hard. But first, before we do that, can you tell me where can people find you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the only social media platform I'm on is Instagram. And so if you want to follow me on Instagram, that's where I'm at. And then I host monthly workshops, and this month we are talking about mental health and screens. And so if you get on my email list, then you'll hear about those workshops. So that's the best place to hang out with me and to find me.
Love it. Perfect. And I will put all of those in the show notes so that people can go directly where they want to go. And okay, so now what is your favorite episode or a couple of episodes if you can't choose just one?
I just released it last month, last week. So I have it easy because I only have a few episodes to choose from. But I would say I shared one episode. One of my episodes is about how I stopped wasting time on addictive apps. And I really like that one because it just shows that I'm a real person and I'm still working through this. And one of the biggest things that I try to focus on in that episode is that when we're using our phone and we're like scrolling more than we'd like, or we waste time on there, that instead of feeling shameful about that or whatever, that is a really exciting opportunity to learn about ourselves and learn how we can improve. And so, that's an episode I like. I just did an interview last night about, with someone I know about her mental health journey and how screens have played a role in that. So I'm really excited for that one as well.
That's awesome. I will make sure to link both of those in the show notes so that people can go straight to them, because I'm sure that I've got listeners that will want to listen to that, because that sounds like what I need to. So I think we're all just going to be tuning in. So because most of my listeners are moms, I always like to ask, is your podcast okay for little ears, or is this like a headphones podcast?
That's a great question. I would say, generally speaking, it's fine for little kids to listen to. There are some things, I guess I should preface this. I'm really careful with what I let my son hear, because he's super aware and asks about anything and everything. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, like in the interview I did last night, it was about mental health. So it did get into some topics like self-harm or thoughts of suicide and things like that. So especially this month when we're focusing on mental health, there are some harder topics that will be brought up, but I would say generally speaking, it's fine for kids to listen to.
Okay, fabulous. So I would say if you're worried about it, listeners, then just look at the show notes and you'll probably get a good feel for if it's going to be a good fit for your kids.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll always include in the show notes if it's something a little bit more, I guess, not the best for kids. Yeah.
Totally. Kind of maybe like a heavier topic. Well,
that's the word I'm looking for. Heavier. Thank you.
Totally. Okay. Is there anything that you want to add that we haven't touched on yet?
I just want to say that you are awesome for doing this.
Oh, thank you.
I'm your super fan, and your episodes are so fun, and your content on Instagram is so fun, and your emails are so fun. And this is a problem that I had, finding good podcasts, and you're solving it.
Wow. Well, thank you. That makes me so happy. I feel like I had that problem 5 years ago when my son was born, and I didn't have a me to help me along. So I wanted to help the me from 5 years ago. So I'm glad that I can be helpful. And I love talking about podcasts and to podcast hosts. So thank you for being here. It's been a delight.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you know someone who could use mindful with media in their life, will you share this episode with them? Also, if you want to have fingernails that bring you joy, get 20% off an Olive & June mani or pedi system by using the link in the show notes. Talk to you soon. Oh, I was going to say that. I really like that your podcast is short. P.S.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that.
I love a short podcast, obviously.